In 1990, when the word supermodel became synonymous with power, glamour, and mystery, one face ruled every cover: Cindy Crawford. Her signature beauty mark above her lip wasn't a flaw, it was a seal recognized around the world. For millions, she embodied the ideal of American perfection. Yet behind the smile that lit up Pepsi campaigns and Versace runways was a woman forced to battle prejudice, relentless pressure, and the silent demons of the industry. Cindy didn't just conquer the fashion world, she redefined it. While other models were treated as disposable figures, she became a name of her own, a living brand. But that transformation wasn't coincidence or luck, it was the result of iron discipline and an intelligence that set her apart from her contemporaries. And here lies the question few dare to ask. What price did Cindy Crawford pay to become the most photographed woman on the planet? How many times did the flash of cameras conceal exhaustion, doubt, or loneliness? Success, sacrifice, and reinvention, three words that define the life of a woman who not only survived the ruthless world of fashion, but also left an indelible mark on popular culture. Cynthia Ann Crawford was born on the 20th of February 1966 in DeKalb, Illinois, a small farming town in the heart of the American Midwest. Far from the spotlight and glamour, her childhood was marked by the simplicity of a working-class family. Her father was an electrician, her mother a homemaker, and within that provincial routine, there seemed to be no space for the idea of an extraordinary destiny. Cindy grew up running through cornfields, her feet stained with dirt and her eyes fixed on a horizon that seemed to repeat itself day after day. Yet even in that humble environment, there was something about her that drew attention. A mix of discipline, curiosity, and a natural beauty impossible to hide. From a young age, she understood that life would not be easy, especially after tragedy struck the family. The death of her younger brother, Jeff, at the age of 3 from leukemia, carved a wound into her memory, one that would remain as a constant reminder of life's fragility. While her classmates dreamed of futures rooted in the same small town, Cindy imagined something greater. It wasn't mere vanity or a simple desire to escape, it was the conviction that the world had a place for her beyond the borders of Illinois. At 16, a local photographer asked her to pose for a few pictures. That session, improvised and without great expectations, became the first spark that lit a fire impossible to extinguish. In that moment, the teenage girl with the piercing gaze realized that cameras held a special power over her, and perhaps she held power over them. Without knowing it, Cindy had taken the first step onto an invisible runway that would lead her from the farms of the Midwest to becoming a global icon. The true turning point in Cindy's life came when she decided to enter a modeling competition organized by the prestigious Elite agency. She was only 17, and though she still carried the innocence of a small-town girl, her presence and confidence dazzled the judges. She didn't win first place, but that hardly mattered. John Casablancas, the founder of Elite Model Management, immediately recognized that this young woman possessed something no one else did. With a mix of excitement and fear, Cindy left for Chicago and later New York, the beating heart of the fashion world. It was a leap into the void, from the quiet streets of DeKalb to the whirlwind of a city where dreams could be realized or destroyed in a matter of seconds. There, beneath neon lights, among yellow taxis and bustling photo studios, she began to learn the unforgiving language of the industry. The beginning was anything but easy. Cindy had to confront the prejudice of editors who criticized her distinctive mole, suggesting she remove it to achieve perfection. But with the unyielding determination that would come to define her, she refused. That mark, she insisted, was part of her identity. And time proved her right. What others dismissed as a flaw soon became her signature, the detail that set her apart from everyone else. Her first true breakthrough came when Richard Avedon, one of the most influential photographers of the era, captured her for Vogue. That cover was a watershed moment. Cindy Crawford was no longer just a promising newcomer, she was a rising star. The runways of New York, Milan, and Paris began to open their doors to her, and her name was soon mentioned alongside other future legends: Naomi Campbell, Linda Evangelista, and Christy Turlington. The leap had been made. Cindy was no longer just another model. She was the girl from the Midwest who dared to enter fashion's sacred temple and claim her place within it. In 1990, a storm swept through the world of fashion, and Cindy Crawford stood at its very eye. Suddenly, her face was everywhere on the covers of Vogue, Elle and Harper's Bazaar, plastered across billboards in New York, London, and Paris. Her mole, once criticized, had become a universally recognized mark of identity. Cindy was no longer just a model. She was a cultural phenomenon. Her fame reached boiling point in 1992 with the now iconic Pepsi commercial aired during the Super Bowl. Wearing denim shorts and a fitted white tank top, Cindy redefined what it meant to be both sexy and approachable at the same time. That televised moment became part of collective memory, cementing her status as a supermodel who transcended fashion to become a global celebrity. On the runways, her presence was magnetic. Versace, Chanel, Dolce, and Gabbana, every house wanted her to open or close their shows. She didn't just walk, she glided with a confidence that hypnotized crowds. Alongside Naomi Campbell, Claudia Schiffer, Linda Evangelista, and Christy Turlington, she became part of the exclusive club known as the Big Five. They weren't just models, they were superstars who defined the decade. But Cindy's success went far beyond the catwalk. She became the first model to truly transform herself into an entrepreneur of her own image. Her fitness videos, Cindy Crawford, Shape Your Body, sold millions of copies and turned her into a lifestyle icon. Cindy understood earlier than anyone else that fame could be a platform for diversification, a tool to build a personal empire. In the blink of an eye, the girl from Illinois had become a symbol of aspiration, representing beauty, discipline, and the American dream. Yet, even as the world applauded, the shadows of the industry began to creep closer, reminding her that every cheer on the runway could carry an invisible price. Behind every cover and every round of applause, Cindy Crawford's world was built on impossible demands. Fashion was an empire dazzling on the outside, but ruthless within. Days turned into endless marathons of flights, photo shoots, and runway shows that allowed no fatigue, no mistakes. In that universe, a smile had to remain flawless even when the body was screaming for rest. The pressure for perfection was suffocating. Strict diets, grueling workouts, and the constant need to maintain an impeccable image became an unforgiving routine. Cindy, with her iron discipline, managed to stay afloat, but not without paying the price. Sleepless nights, anxiety, and the ever-present sensation of being watched, measured, and judged. And then came the darker side of fame, the invasion of the tabloid press. Every outing, every romance, every detail of her private life became headline fodder. Her marriage to actor Richard Gere, celebrated in 1991, was consumed by the tabloids. What should have been a sanctuary of intimacy turned into a media circus, adding unbearable strain to a marriage that ultimately collapsed. The industry itself offered no safe harbor. Cruel remarks, sexist demands, and multi-million-dollar contracts tied to an impossible standard of beauty were the order of the day. Cindy admitted in several interviews that the objectification was real, that many times she felt like a product more than a person. And while she projected an image of confidence and strength, she knew, like all her peers, that she was at the mercy of a system that could lift her to the heavens one day and bury her in oblivion the next. These were the secrets hidden behind the lights. The loneliness of hotel rooms, the silent sacrifices, and the constant struggle to maintain control of her own narrative. Cindy stood at the top of the world. Yes, but she was also walking an invisible tightrope. Cindy's brilliance seemed unbreakable, but even the brightest stars must endure eclipses. By the mid-990 seconds, while her image still graced campaigns and runways, cracks began to show in her perfect world. Her divorce from Richard Gere in 1995 was not only a personal heartbreak, it exposed her private life to a level of brutal scrutiny. The press showed no mercy, circling like vultures, turning every rumor into a feast. The wear and tear wasn't only emotional. Cindy began to feel the exhaustion of a decade lived at maximum speed. The physical and psychological demands of the industry took their toll. In a universe where youth was the ultimate currency, turning 30 felt like a looming threat. Editors and designers were already searching for the next fresh face, pushing veterans into invisible corners. The pressure intensified. How could she remain relevant in a system designed to replace without hesitation? Cindy tried to resist, but the weight of relentless competition and merciless criticism was crushing. Her insecurities surfaced, and for the first time, she wondered if it was truly worth staying in a world that seemed determined to consume her. Adding to the storm was a cultural shift. The supermodel phenomenon was giving way to a new era where celebrities, actresses, and singers began to occupy the spotlight once reserved for fashion. Cindy, once the most photographed woman on the planet, now felt the vertigo of a slow, inevitable fall. It wasn't a downfall that stripped her of everything, but it did force her to confront the brutal truth of the industry. In fashion, success is never measured by what you achieved yesterday, but by what you can still offer tomorrow. And in that question, Cindy found herself trapped, standing at the edge of an abyss of doubt. Being Cindy Crawford meant far more than appearing on magazine covers or opening Versace runways. It meant carrying the weight of a world that saw her as the embodiment of perfection. That weight, intangible yet constant, forced her into a discipline that bordered on inhuman. Every meal, every public appearance, every word uttered in an interview was dissected under a microscope. There was no room for mistakes. The price of being an icon wasn't measured only in personal sacrifices, but in emotional losses as well. Cindy admitted more than once that fame had isolated her. Childhood friendships faded with time, and trusting someone new became almost impossible. Loneliness became a frequent companion, even in the middle of blinding lights and thunderous applause. Her body, celebrated by millions, also bore the cost. Endless hours of photo shoots under extreme conditions, constant travel that disrupted her health, strict diets, and the crushing psychological pressure not to age. Time, the most merciless enemy in fashion, became a shadow trailing her every step. But perhaps the most painful truth was how the industry reduced models to mere products. Cindy, with all her intelligence and talent, was fully aware that million-dollar contracts didn't always recognize the woman, they recognized only the image. That disconnection between who she was and what she projected became an internal struggle that haunted her for years. The icon who inspired millions was, at her core, a woman who had learned far too early that glory demands a silent tribute. Lost privacy, exposed vulnerability, and the sacrifice of pieces of herself that could never be reclaimed. After the emotional blows and the gnawing sense of exhaustion, Cindy Crawford realized that if she wanted to remain relevant, she would have to reinvent herself. She could not afford to be just another supermodel in an industry forever hungry for fresh faces. So she began to carve out new paths, proving that intelligence and strategic vision could be just as powerful as beauty. One of her first steps toward reinvention was stepping into television. In the early 90s, she became the host of MTV's House of Style, a program that didn't just talk about fashion but offered an intimate glimpse into the lifestyles of celebrities. The show was a resounding success, allowing Cindy to establish herself as a media figure with her own voice, not just a beautiful face. At the same time, she expanded into the world of fitness and wellness. Her workout videos became a global phenomenon, selling millions of copies and connecting her to an audience that didn't necessarily follow fashion but admired her as a symbol of discipline and health. Cindy was reinventing herself as an entrepreneur, understanding that real power lay in controlling her own image. Motherhood also marked a profound personal rebirth. With businessman Rand Gerber, Cindy found a new source of balance and motivation. The arrival of her children, Presley and Kaya, gave her a purpose that stretched beyond the catwalks. Especially Kaya, who years later would follow in her mother's footsteps, becoming a model herself, a bridge between two generations of supermodels. Every step Cindy took during this chapter was an act of resistance against oblivion. While many of her colleagues faded into anonymity, she adapted, diversified, and proved that beauty was only one part of her legacy, never the entirety of it. The name Cindy Crawford was no longer just synonymous with glamour, it had become a symbol of vision and permanence. Her legacy transcended the runways and redefined what it meant to be a supermodel. She was one of the first to understand that fashion could be a platform, but that true power lay in becoming a brand of her own. That entrepreneurial instinct blazed a trail that figures like Gisele Bündchen and Tyra Banks would later follow. Her transformation was not only professional, but cultural. Cindy embodied an ideal of beauty that was strong, healthy, and attainable, standing in stark contrast to the fragile archetypes that had dominated in earlier eras. She represented the woman who could be a mother, a businesswoman, an athlete, and a public figure all at once. In doing so, she shattered the notion that models were mere passive faces meant to decorate magazine covers. She proved they could be influential voices, leaders, and trendsetters. Cindy's legacy also lives on in her ability to inspire future generations. Her daughter, Kaia Gerber, is the living proof of that continuity, inheriting not only her mother's striking features, but also her discipline and magnetic presence on the runway. The transition from Cindy to Kaia symbolizes the way fashion reinvents itself and how a single surname can evolve into a dynasty. But beyond the businesses, the catwalks, and the family heritage, Cindy Crawford's greatest transformation was deeply personal. She went from being a small-town girl in Illinois to becoming a global icon who learned to master a system that so often devours those within it. She did it while holding on to her essence and, above all, by becoming a symbol of resilience against the inhuman demands of fashion. Today, when the word supermodel is spoken, her name still appears in the same breath as Naomi Campbell, Linda Evangelista, and Claudia Schiffer. Not just because they shared a golden era, but because Cindy knew how to transcend it. In the year 2000, Cindy Crawford stunned the world when she announced her official retirement from the runway. She was only 34, but in the unforgiving logic of fashion, that was already considered a lifetime. Her farewell was not an act of defeat, but a declaration of freedom. Cindy no longer wanted to be a prisoner of the industry's relentless calendar. She wanted to choose her own battles. Her last show wasn't a single event, but a gradual process. Step by step, she reduced her presence in campaigns and magazines while strengthening her entrepreneurial side. She launched her own cosmetics lines, collaborated on interior design projects, and solidified her name as a lifestyle brand. Cindy no longer depended on the whims of a designer or an editor. She owned her own narrative. In her personal life, she found in her marriage to Rand Gerber the stability that fame had denied her in earlier years. Family became her refuge, and her children, her driving force. From then on, Cindy's private life was defined more by discretion than by scandal, a striking contrast to the media frenzy of her supermodel years. And though she stepped away from the catwalk, she never truly disappeared. Her legacy lived on in every retro magazine cover, in every documentary about the 90s, and most of all, in the career of Kaia Gerber, who inherited not only her beauty but also her strength and determination. Cindy had shifted from being the absolute protagonist to becoming a guardian of the supermodel lineage. Cindy Crawford's final runway was not in Milan or Paris, but on the stage of real life, a graceful passage from intensity to serenity, from exposure to balance, from mass icon to a fulfilled woman who closed her cycle without ever losing her essence. The story of Cindy Crawford is far more than the biography of a supermodel. It is the tale of a woman who transformed a mole into a symbol, who turned beauty into a weapon of power, and who mastered the art of reinvention in a world designed to consume and discard faces. Her life is a mirror of the 90s, a decade when catwalks became global spectacles and a chosen few models were elevated into living myths. But behind the myth was the person, the little girl from Illinois who learned life's fragility through the loss of her brother, the young woman who refused to erase her most distinctive mark, the icon who discovered that success always carries a silent cost. Cindy paid that price, but she also claimed what was hers: control of her career, her legacy, and her identity. Today, her name still resonates not simply because she was part of a golden era, but because she helped define it. Her legacy lives on in every campaign that champions female strength, in every model who fights to have her own voice, and in every woman who draws inspiration from her discipline and resilience. Cindy Crawford is, at her core, a lesson in endurance within a universe that spins too fast. In the end, her story leaves us with an open question. What does it truly mean to be an icon? Is it fame, magazine covers, multi-million-dollar contracts? Or is it the ability to leave an indelible mark on the collective memory? Cindy, with her steady walk and unwavering gaze, seems to offer the answer. An icon is not the one who shines for a fleeting moment, but the one whose light endures long after the cameras go dark.